Welcome, I'm Terry Christensen, and this is Valley Politics. Today we'll talk with Matt Mahan, the CEO of Brigade.com, about online political organizing. Is it the future of political participation? Does it really produce change, or does it just make us feel like we're doing something? Before we talk with Matt, we'll hear what people at the recent State of the County event said when we asked if they've ever signed an online petition. Later, on Community News, Jim Reber will brief us on the work of the San Jose Parks Foundation. Then, on Where Are They Now, we'll talk with two women who were leaders of an historic strike here in San Jose in 1981. That's what's coming up next on Valley Politics. Welcome everyone, and welcome Matt Mahan. Matt, we're going to talk about Brigade in just a minute, but first we want to show you a quick 1-minute video. We went to the State of the County speech last week, and we asked a bunch of people there if they'd ever signed an online petition. And here's what they said.
I've signed an online petition before. They always get circulated. Eventually they end up at a council or they end up to the state government. And so I think online petitions are a great way to be more connected with different populations.
I've signed numerous online petitions, whether they be organic grassroots petitions or change.org petitions.
I have signed an online petition, and I hope to keep signing them. They're a very good political resource.
Oh, I've signed many online petitions.
Oh, plenty of online petitions.
I've signed a lot of petitions, but I feel like they're mainly the regular paper petitions out in the wild.
I have signed many online petitions.
I've signed a lot of them in the last 2 years for both state, federal, and local issues.
Many. I'm an advocate for senior services, and I've signed many.
Yes, I have.
Online petitions, yes, definitely.
Yes, I have signed an online petition before.
So every single person we talked to said, yes, I've signed. Some of them said multiple signings. Of course, this wasn't a random sample. These are political people because they were at a State of the County speech. Sure. But would you have expected 100%?
Yeah, close to it.
Really?
So yeah, absolutely. So the civic tech platforms that I've worked on over the years, Causes, Brigade, across them we've seen hundreds of millions of petition signatures from every imaginable demographic. And so I think it's a pretty ubiquitous phenomenon. The thing I find interesting, though, is I think most people misunderstand the role of online petitions. They think that the petition itself is going to create change when really that, for lack of a better analogy, is the gateway drug. It's meant to be the first rung in the ladder to more activism and more engagement. So if you're just signing an online petition, you're not really having much of an impact.
Well, tell us about Brigade.
Sure. So Brigade actually goes back nearly 10 years to an early Facebook app that I worked on called Causes. And we built the first set of organizing tools on top of a social network for philanthropy, advocacy, and even electoral organizing. And over the years, Facebook built a lot of tools that ended up sort of replacing what Causes did. But for years, we had real scale, a couple 100 million users. And so out of that, the core team decided to build a separate network, a special purpose network called Brigade, that has really been focused on helping voters connect around their political districts and the issues that they care about, and then giving them tools to take collective action both through advocacy and collective voting.
So what happens when I go onto the Brigade website and I decide to form a brigade, which I did?
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you invite some friends?
I did.
Okay.
And they all said yes.
Oh,
but now I don't know quite what to do with it.
Well, from there you can talk about issues, find a campaign to support. So the starting place for us is really opinion expression. We think the place where most people spend their time is following the news, forming opinions, and wanting to discuss politics. The action-taking piece is just the tip of the iceberg. So we try to help people find other like-minded voters who live in the same political districts, and then give them the tools they need to organize for action that can have an actual impact on a piece of legislation or the outcome of an election.
It looked like it was a brigade was more focused on national level politics.
Yeah.
What if I want to petition my council member or my county supervisor?
We did some local testing, and we would, our vision has always been to get to that the amount of data and the content that is available at a federal and a state level has made it easier to start there. And we've really wanted to build a national network.
What are the demographics of your users? Does it skew young?
Surprisingly, it doesn't. In fact, in 2016, we had such a representative sample of voters on our platform that we saw Donald Trump winning the presidential election when almost no one else did. And so we're geographically diverse, we're demographically and ideologically diverse. And Facebook has seen the same thing. So we get a lot of our users from other social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. And in fact, it's middle-aged Americans more than any who are spending time on these networks.
How did you know they were skewing to Trump?
So we had a tool that enabled people to endorse their favorite candidate.
See. Okay, so you weren't snooping into their...
No, it was all public facing. People could make an endorsement and invite their friends. And interestingly, in parts of the Midwest especially, we were witnessing registered Democrats crossing over and indicating that they were going to vote for Donald Trump, which shocked us. In fact, we didn't even believe the data that we had until election night.
But turned out it was accurate data.
Yeah.
So I operate a listserv for Friends of Five Wounds Trail. Why would Brigade be a better forum for me to use for organizing?
Well, I think the difference is that we've added a set of tools or functionality that is specific to political organizing. Petitions, phone calls, the ability to track actions that other people take, the ability to upload all of your contacts and invite them to take action and see whether or not they have. So
and have more of a conversation within the contacts
and conversation.
On the website?
It's really a social network. It's kind of like LinkedIn for professionals or Nextdoor for neighbors. This is a network for voters, and at least that's been the vision over the last 5 years.
I've heard that Brigade is going through some reorganization at the moment. What's going on?
Yeah, even more than a reorganization. It's a significant transition. So we just announced that we found a home for about half of our team at a large social network company called Pinterest, which is for do-it-yourself projects. And that's really been an attempt to scale down our costs. And we're now looking for a partner, hopefully a company that has either more scale or more revenue to team up with Brigade and continue the work that we've done. The hard thing about just a consumer-only facing app in politics is that the engagement is incredibly cyclical and episodic.
Oh yeah, around elections.
It's around elections and big events in the news. Over the years, I've come to believe that what we've been building might be better done with a smaller team set up as a nonprofit with longer-term financing and a very different set of expectations. As a venture-backed startup, if you're not growing to tens of millions of people and figuring out how to make money pretty quickly, you're just not viable. And I'm not sure that our mission actually conforms to that model.
Yeah. What do you think has been the biggest accomplishment for Brigade so far?
Well, I think we have innovated on what technology for democracy can look like. We've built a really voter-centric, personalized experience that helps an individual voter learn about issues, express their opinions, connect and communicate with other people, and really importantly, hold their representatives accountable. It's truly voter-centric. Almost everyone else building tools in the political space builds tools for the incumbents, for the people who have budgets, the politicians, the PACs, the nonprofits.
Raise money, get out the vote.
We've tried to build it specifically for that individual citizen who wants to get more engaged. And so I think as with so many cycles of innovation in Silicon Valley, a lot of the things that we experimented with, some of which worked, most of which didn't work, frankly, are things that the next wave of innovators will learn from and build on top of. And we're really proud to have that legacy and to be part of that sort of revolution that's happening in our democracy, specifically in terms of how technology is implemented to empower citizens.
Well, that technology piece is something I wanted to ask you about, because you're an expert on technology and politics and communication. How worried are you about the misuse of technology in politics to disrupt elections, spread misinformation?
I'm very worried, and I think that with every big revolution in communications technology, there's a lag between what the technology is capable of and how it can be misused, and our understanding and our kind of natural cultural immune system, if you will. And so I think, regulation of technology companies is going to be part of the answer, but I actually think that the deeper, more sustainable change is going to be education and making sure that people understand that these tools are not always providing accurate information. Every technology is open to abuse, and we've got to raise our collective IQ around how we use these online platforms.
How do we do that?
Well, it's everything from some of it's regulation and ensuring that the platforms are responsible actors and are policing the platform appropriately. Part of it is integrating media literacy and upgrading what we consider to be media literacy in our classrooms.
Yeah.
And part of it is the responsibility of citizens to put in a little extra effort and be a little more self-reflective and critical of the information they're getting.
So it's a variety of ways to do that, but really civic education is a huge piece of it.
Yeah, I think so.
You're the chair of the board of Joint Venture Silicon Valley, and Joint Venture just came out with its 2019 report. So I wonder if there was like one bit of that report that really stood out to you that was news, something we're going to need to be adapting ourselves to here in the Valley.
Yeah, I thought the most striking insight from the index was the speed of the socioeconomic transition that's happening in Silicon Valley. And there's a positive piece of that story, and there's a really concerning piece. So the positive piece is that we are seeing an overall increase in the number of high-income earners in our region. There's a lot of economic growth, a lot of wealth being created. We're seeing a lot of net migration, particularly international migration, people coming from all over the world for opportunity here, which is an important part of our history. And so those are positive things. But because from a public policy standpoint, we aren't managing economic growth sufficiently, we're also seeing a lot of displacement. We're seeing net loss of domestic migration out of the area, if you will. And we're seeing a decline in real displacement in terms of middle class and lower income workers in our area.
People starting to leave.
People are leaving.
Especially at the lower end of the economic spectrum. We just did our show on displacement last month, so you can go back and catch that.
I will.
I know you've been getting really engaged in local politics, and I know that goes back to when you were a student before you went away to college, but I just wonder, how do you see San Jose politics? How do you think it's working in general?
It's a good question. On the positive side, going back to when I was in high school and I interned for Jim Bell and Ann Ravel in county government, the thing that always struck me about San Jose was that it was so open. Also diverse and innovative, but more than anything, you could break in and meet people, you could learn quickly.
Absolutely.
You could just showing up was enough to meet people and to learn and to get involved, and before you knew it, people would ask you to take on responsibility. And as a high school student, I really appreciated that opportunity, and I haven't found it again in other cities I've lived in, like Boston and DC and San Francisco.
Much more intense organizational structure, longer time to pay your dues,
exactly.
Get in and get credit.
Exactly, more of a hierarchy. The one thing, if I could change one thing about San Jose's political culture, it would be that I would like us to be bolder. I think we have the opportunity to really chart a course for what cities in America look like for a growing, diverse, upwardly mobile middle class, but it's going to take big investments. We can't rest on our laurels. We're going to have to really invest in our infrastructure, our education system, housing and transportation, obviously. And I want to see us be bolder and chart more of a course into the future, just as our private sector employers do.
Well, that's a great note on which to conclude. Matt Mahan, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now Jim Reber will tell us about the work of the San Jose Parks Foundation.
San Jose Parks Foundation is a community-based nonprofit organization dedicated to advocating for San Jose's parks and trails and the programs within them by empowering residents and volunteers and securing private donations. We basically provide private sector support for the public parks and trails. We do this in 4 ways, often using fiscal sponsorship as a way to provide support for these efforts. 1. Citizen empowerment. San Jose Parks Foundation works in partnership with citizens, neighborhood groups, and other nonprofits, as well as with the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services. 2. Advocacy. The foundation provides advocacy for parks and trails and community centers on behalf of the community, often in association with other groups, citizens, and sometimes city officials. 3, volunteer support. San Jose Parks Foundation supports the city's volunteer program for parks, recreation, and neighborhood services, working with Molly Tobias to recruit, train, and manage volunteers in the city's parks, trails, and community centers. 4, youth programs. Many of the severest budget cuts made to parks were in youth activities. Some programs were cut altogether and others had to charge fees where once the activities had been free to all youth. San Jose Parks Foundation tries to help support these programs by funding them or subsidizing low-income youth participants who require such support. You can find us online at www.sanjoseparks.org. Thank you very much.
Next on Where Are They Now, our guests are Joan Goddard and Patt Curia, leaders of the 1981 strike for comparable worth pay in San Jose. That was the first such strike in the nation and an historic advance for equal pay for women. Joan Goddard, Patt Curia, welcome to Valley Politics. We're going to talk about a strike that happened in 1981, city employees, and had repercussions way beyond San Jose. So we'll get to that. But first of all, what were you two doing in 1980 before the strike?
We were both senior librarians at the San Jose Public Library, which is a department of the city. And Pat was in charge of a department at the main library, and I was in charge of a branch library.
Most people don't think of librarians as very likely strikers, but the librarians were a core of the strike at that time, right? Pat, what was the strike about? What led to the strike?
Well, it started really in 1979 when the Jim Alloway, who was the
city manager,
yeah. A new city manager, he was concerned about pay inequities amongst the managers. And because he was new, he was trying to, cultivate their support. So he recommended to the city council that they have a study of jobs, not particularly because of pay, female or gender issues, but just to get the salaries up. And so the city council agreed, and then we were very interested because Maxine Jenkins, who was our AFSCME representative.
AFSCME is the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees.
Very good,
right?
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
And she heard about it, and she felt that the non-management classifications should be evaluated at the same time. And once we heard that, there had been ripples throughout the library nationally about pay equity. And so the librarians were kind of ahead of the game and wanting to be studied. And we had formed an organization called CLAW, which is Concerned Library Activist Workers. And it had two functions, really, to promote library services in the community and at City Council, but also to I want to say, infiltrate the union and make sure that pay equity became a topic. So when the strike occurred, and this is after a year and a half, and we can get into that, there were really two issues, because we were both on the negotiating team, and the one issue was the city wasn't offering enough cost of living adjustments, so that eliminated a lot of supporters right there, or that rather gathered a lot of supporters. And then
so that's everybody across the board.
Yeah, that's everybody. And then the study had been presented, and we saw the inequities between our jobs and other people's jobs within the non-management, but also the managers our manager had received a 24% increase, our direct lead. So a lot of people were upset, almost everybody in the union. And so the strike was kind of a foregone conclusion unless the city and which was the feminist capital of the world. I'm sure you're going to bring that up. so it took a long time and a lot of starts and stops, but July 5th is when
1981.
1981.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit. So feminist capital of at least the United States, because we had a female mayor, first female mayor of a major American city, that was Janet Gray Hayes, elected in '74. And by 1980, when this started to happen, 7 out of 11 council members, the 7 including the mayor, were women. And there was a majority of women on the County Board of Supervisors and a couple of women representing the area in the state legislature. And women's groups, National Women's Political Caucus, now were very active as well. So that helped build a base of support for what you did. But
you think.
You'd think. You talked about pay equity. This was also called comparable worth. So let's define what that meant. Joan, can you do that for us?
Comparable worth is comparing women's work jobs and men's work jobs.
Kind of apples to oranges.
No? Well, yes, because exactly, and we talked about that because you can compare apples and oranges.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things they have, categories of things they have in common, and that was true, and Pat was one of the people analyzing the job, so she can talk more about that. But the idea is that no matter who has a women's work job, most of the people doing that work are women.
And that would be librarians, clerical workers.
And which include men, but not
but
in the same numbers
women.
as construction inspectors and surveyors and a lot of automobile repair people, et cetera, where it's mostly men, even though there may be some women.
Well, was there tension within the union over this? Because everybody wanted a pay raise, right? But there were a lot of men in the union.
Yeah. It built up gradually, so they had a chance to learn about it and to think about it
and they
to think about their families.
Well, yeah.
Their sisters, their wives,
so
their cousins.
Eventually were supportive of, they were out on strike too?
Yes, they did, and they went on strike. I was in front of City Hall and also at the airport and the sewer treatment plant striking or picketing. And so it was great because there was support from other unions. So the Teamsters...
Private sector unions.
Well, yes, the Teamsters wouldn't cross the line, and that helped move the city along, because when you start shutting down operations in the airport, and that's serious.
Who were the opponents? Who was objecting to the strike?
Well, I think people objecting to the issue would be...
That's a better way to put it, yeah.
Would be business.
Well, I know the Chamber of Commerce was.
Yeah. I mean, we were reading articles about, and from the New York Times saying, this is going to destroy business throughout the world, and of course that hasn't happened.
Wall Street Journal did an editorial, Forbes magazine, Chamber of Commerce, League of California Cities, National League of Cities. There actually was a lot of opposition because this really was shaking up the whole pay structure that could extend beyond
government.
Public sector, to private sector.
But it also, also other governments, the problem is there wasn't a lot of money. This was, post Prop 13. So budgets were tight.
Yeah.
And we were asking for a lot because the adjustments, we got a 15% increase over 2 years based on comparable worth. That's on top of
And that was only the beginning of what we were owed.
Strike took 9 days. And then you succeeded. The city council voted 8-3 in favor of the union demands. So it was settled.
Well, it was negotiated.
It was negotiated.
Yeah, there were compromises made on both sides.
Okay, but basically you won.
Come
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we won.
Yeah, it was a big deal. You won. What made that happen? To what do you attribute the success?
Well, I think
it was the first. It was among the first of any city or county or state to do this.
Right.
So
it
really
was
breaking new ground.
It was the first strike over this issue in the United States, and other places had done projects where they had looked at comparable worth, and sometimes they had made some salary adjustments, but they were fairly small. A school district in Southern California, and either at the same time or shortly before, Minnesota did a great job and is still doing a great job because they require checking on this every 2 to 3 years, making a report, making continued salary adjustments if necessary, which is very important because after all of this time since 1981, and even since late 1980s, when we finished getting adjustments, we get salary increases that are percentages. And so unless the salaries are the same, the lower paid salary in the same kind level of job is going to get a lower salary increase than the higher paid jobs in that level of work, and the gap widens again, which is what they're avoiding in Minnesota.
So the issue wasn't resolved. Ultimately, it's an ongoing challenge, right? But that said, this was a big deal in 1981.
Definitely.
And it was setting a new precedent that could lead to further adjustments. So I still want to take you back to, why did you win?
One of the reasons, perhaps, the management had gotten their big increases. And so our library management was very supportive of us going on strike. And there was no repercussions when we came back. But I think it was kind of embarrassing, for the city to be the feminist capital, and yet, you can get fired. We all got letters, and we had one of our rallies where we all burnt our termination letters, and so.
Weren't you scared?
You were. I didn't have any. I
Maybe
didn't have a family.
Maybe you were too young to be scared.
But I was very sympathetic to the secretaries and the single moms. It is scary because we were representing them, and we could have said no, we're going to hang out longer and get more. And I think the negotiating team felt that this was good enough.
Good beginning.
This is the beginning, and the city, I think, felt that the same. And what did you say, Frank? The head negotiator, he described our strike as very classy.
Yes, right. The city's negotiator said that we had a classy strike, and that was based on a lot of experience through his years.
So
I checked, and I noticed the Mercury News supported the goals of the
Great.
strike.
Wonderful.
And that
back then,
we need to remember that was a new Mercury News. If the strike had happened before 1977, with the old management, they would have been way on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, I was reading the news, and all the airport controllers were fired by Ronald Reagan a month later.
Yeah, that was happening too.
So it happened at the right time.
Yeah.
And not later.
Right time.
Right
place.
Right people.
Right political environment. Right leaders, and workers that were united.
That's it.
And that's really what it takes.
Right.
It's not just the leaders.
And it had built up over a period of time.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't as if this is something that happened overnight.
And it's a fairness issue too.
Absolutely. And Patt Curia and Joan Goddard, we're out of time. But thank you very much for filling us in on this important little piece of history in San Jose that did have repercussions way beyond San Jose. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
In the next couple of months, our guests will include Supervisor Joe Simidian and Mayor Sam Liccardo. They'll update us on the state of the county and the state of the city. Meanwhile, you can catch up on previous shows on our website at creatvsj.org or on YouTube by searching for CreaTV San Jose. And you can let us know what you think about our show and suggest future topics or guests by email at valleypolitics@creatvsj.org, on Twitter at @valley_politics, and by following us on Facebook. And now that's all, folks. Thanks for watching Valley Politics. See you next time.